Thank you all for joining us for Pando Days. My name is Eugene Shirley, and I'm the president of Pando Populous, which is an environmental and social impact accelerator based in Los Angeles County. Pando Days brings the art, design, architecture, and sustainability programs together from 10 Southland colleges and universities to help LA County implement its ambitious new sustainability plan. Now, each of the participating Pando Days institutions adopted a different goal from the LA County plan and created ingenious plans of their own for implementing it. Brainstorming began in the fall of last year with project development over as many as 7 months. Make sure you go to our website, pandopopulous.com, to see all the school project descriptions and their deliverables. We're posting them on a rolling basis, by the way, between now and the third week in July, premiering 2 school projects per week. All of the 10 premier events follow the same format, hosted by a member of the Pando Populous Board of Directors, with a summary presentation of the featured project by the team leads. We then have short responses and questions from members of the Chief Sustainability Officer Task Force of Los Angeles County, and a period of public Q&A. We'll close by the end of the hour. All projects are being assessed by a panel of judges based on recordings of these presentations and the project deliverables. When we come together on July 25 for the finale, we'll hear which projects they believe have the greatest chance for the greatest impact for county sustainability. Pando Days host for today is the Reverend Ed Bacon. Ed is a member of our board of directors. He's a legend in the fight for justice and environmental matters. He was the first faith leader in the country to preach about the spiritual and moral ethical significance of Pando, the one tree forest that we're named after, and that's all connected underground. For more than 20 years, he was senior rector at All Saints Pasadena, and he is currently interim rector at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Atlanta. He's author of 8 Habits of Love, and we are delighted to have him hosting this event today. Ed, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and thank you, Eugene. Oh, I'm very excited about this moment. I'm excited to learn. I love UCLA. I love this project. I love the fact that we're going to be focusing on birds. And let me say a little bit about our host, our institution, and its project. And then I just want to say a word or two about why it's so meaningful to me. And pardon me for reading some notes. I want to make sure that I get all the names correct. But we are focusing on UCLA today, and their project is Biophilia Treehouse. They're addressing county goal number 5, which is thriving ecosystems, habitats, and biodiversity. And the project deals with the critical matter of wildlife corridors, in this case, avian wildlife corridors, with resting, feeding, and nesting sites at strategically placed geographic locations for the dual purpose of serving an abundance of birds as well as humans, for whom the sites will offer respite for reconnecting with the natural world. The team is led by, and you will hear from her in a few moments, Professor Rebecca Mendez. And now I get to say just a word about how inspired I feel connected with this particular project and this particular team from UCLA. As Eugene just said, my wife and I lived in Southern California in Pasadena for 21 years. And then we moved to Alabama, where I am right now, to be near our grandchildren. And then I got called out of retirement to be the head of a very progressive downtown church in Atlanta. All of my career has been about making sure that Christianity is love-based, not fear-based, and is oneness-based, not separateness-based. And when in 2014, I was introduced to the existence of Pando, this one tree forest, 106-acre root ball, 57,000 different trunks, which are actually stems from the same root ball, all of which have the same DNA, and all of them look different. It was a wonderful icon for me of not only the human family, but all of creation. We may look different, but we are one. And we are lost. And we cannot sustain ourselves if we do not claim the oneness and the wholeness of all of us. That includes birds. They are we. We are they. Who can sit amongst a symphony of songbirds and not be inspired? I am a person who gets my primary inspiration from the biblical text, which holds up birds left and right, that we are connected with the sparrows, with the eagles, with all of bird life. I like to refer to those members of the planetary family that are not human as the more than human members. And so it behooves us all to make sure that we are caring for something as small as a bird. And I'm so grateful that today we get to hear about how this brilliant team at UCLA is doing that. So I think my time is out. It's now time, and I'll be back, but it's now time to hear about the project from the team lead, Professor Rebecca Mendez. Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ed. That was such a beautiful introduction. And thank you, Eugene, and the whole team of Pando. We are so happy, proud, and inspired by all what you all are doing, and just happy to be part of it. Thank you. And Ed, yes, I mean, I think that, of course, my team, we will present our video, but one of the things is that, again, is like in our hearts for us to indeed learn to be able to find our place in the universe. It's like it is so much about listening to other species and to consider ourselves one of many species, and to do away with this superiority idea that the human species is greater. So it's all about finding our place in the universe. So, you know, the Counterforce Lab is founded for that specific reason. And in this case, of course, the birds are our client. And so we definitely speak from that point of view. But I think that, if, you know, without further ado, I'd love to introduce, you know, my team members that will be leading, Erin and Ellie, and we'll be sharing our video with you where you'll hear all the details about us and the story. So Erin, in your hands.
Thanks, Rebecca. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Cooney, grad student at UCLA in Design Media Arts, and I'm so happy to present our video to you. We made something special for you. So the way we're going to show it, though, we'd like to ask you to go look at the chat window, and the first item there you'll see is a link, a Vimeo link. We'd like you to watch it that way because Zoom, when you play video back and share your screen, it has this stuttering thing, and we really want you to see the video in its full beauty. So so what I'm going to ask you to do is go to the link, open it up, and everyone's going to get muted so we don't have any interference with audio. And then I'm going to sort of give a countdown, and we can all watch it together, you know, communally. So I'm getting a message that hasn't come through, so I'm going to send it to everyone right now. All right, there's the link. So if you could open that up, it's going to open it up on your browser. All right. I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds so everyone can do that. And I'll say in this moment, after our video shows, we're going to be fielding questions from you all using mostly our whole team is here, and we're all going to be answering your questions. Okay, I'm ready to count down to play our video. So everyone's muted. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, press play.
I am Rebecca Mendez, Chair of the UCLA Design Media Arts Department and founder and director of the Counterforce Lab. The lab is dedicated to using art and design to develop new collaborative insights, disciplines, and methods to research, create, and execute projects around the ecological impacts of the anthropogenic climate change. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the interdisciplinary team for our biophilia treehouse.
I'm Sana Jahani, a graduate student and architectural designer and a proud Angelino.
I'm Maru Garcia, a transdisciplinary artist and researcher.
Hi, I'm Jürgen Muller. I'm a landscape scholar and photographer.
I'm Ellie Diamant, a bird researcher.
I'm Malros Carraga. I'm an artist, scientist, and educator.
My name is Andrew Gonzalez, and I am an outdoor enthusiast and a lifelong student of the built environment.
I am Wono Lee. I'm an undergraduate designer and artist.
I'm Erin Cooney, an artist, educator, and activist. As the UCLA team participating in Pando Days, our project Biophilia Treehouse responds to the LA County Sustainability Plan Goal Number 5, Thriving Ecosystems, Habitats, and Biodiversity.
Goal number 5 is vital because urbanization and climate change are threatening all 3 in the region.
We are focusing on birds because they are indicator species of the overall health of an ecosystem. LA County is the birdiest county in the U.S., and yet the county is also home to the largest set of threatened and endangered animals and plants in the country. There is a great loss of green space for birds and Angelinos alike, especially in poor, underserved, and under-resourced communities. Our project Biophilia Treehouse addresses this environmental inequity. Biophilia means the love of living things. As bird lovers, we honor them by building biophilia tree houses, which are lush, vibrant, tree-like living sculptures that soar into the sky, inviting an abundance of birds to co-create places where they can rest, feed, nest, and in essence, make them a recurring home. These scalable, lightweight structures hold a myriad of native plants and are also places for Angelinos to contemplate, observe, and reconnect to nature.
Let's take a deeper look behind the design. The Biophilia Treehouse aims to facilitate conditions of success for each bird species and native plant selection we have carefully curated. This vertical structure is engaged at 3 heights in order to attract both birds and humans without one deterring the other. The ground floor is inhabited by people who can observe the bird and plant life above them, enjoy the shade, and meditate perhaps. At 15 feet above ground, the structure cantilevers into a shelf, simulating a ground-like habitat for the birds. In the above heights, we provide nesting and foraging resources so our birds can inhabit the structure the same way they would trees and branches. Our structure is a system of interlocking modules inspired by the sophisticated design of hooklet and barbel joinery found in bird feathers. The top portion of the structure is a self-supported cluster of wood members that are assembled using a traditional Japanese wood joinery technique that literally translates to interlocking hell. These diagrams demonstrate how the members come together to create a self-supporting structure that emulates the sophistication of our natural habitat. The top tier both facilitates the vertical growth of plants and the nesting of the birds, a tree of trees in many ways.
Our biophilia tree houses are planned to be home to Allen's hummingbirds, California scrub jays, lesser goldfinches, mourning doves, Nuttall's woodpeckers, oak titmice, song sparrows, and western bluebirds. Why birds? Birds are indicator species for habitat health, and Los Angeles County is the birdiest county in the United States with over 500 species recorded here. However, this number is just over 300 species in the built environment of Los Angeles. What is an indicator species? A species whose presence, absence, or relative well-being in a given environment is a sign of the overall health of its ecosystem.
That is why our use of native plants is so important. Our bird species are sensitive to their environments and rely on specific native plants to survive and thrive. Our plant species are grasses, buckwheats, sages, fuchsias, berries, and trees.
These plants make up native habitats that allow species to move freely for gathering food, finding mates, and fulfilling their space requirements. Urbanization breaks apart these habitats. When they are no longer connected, organisms cannot move between them, leading to a smaller range for individuals and an increase in inbreeding. As such, populations decrease in genetic health and in some cases are unable to live within a limited range, leading to population collapse and local extinction. Increasing connectivity through building wildlife corridors, or stepping stones, provides habitat so individuals can move between fragmented patches, increases individual range, and allows populations to connect across a landscape, share genetic material, and prevent potential collapse.
Where to locate the biophilia treehouses? We're working at the intersection of three specific criteria: habitat connectivity, community park needs, and economic inequality. Mapping existing parks and open spaces, we get an idea of how scattered they actually are, especially in the LA basin. This results in a highly disconnected wildlife habitats. Our team designated 6 wildlife corridors in LA County that offer opportunities to restore avian ecosystems. For the first phase of our project, we're focusing on the southern section of the LA River corridor because it is an area that combines all 3 of our criteria. Biophilia treehouses will connect scattered bird habitats and increase access to green space for underserved communities.
The biophilia tree houses need community commitment to be nurtured and maintained. In partnering with local public schools, these structures will foster opportunities for hands-on education, environmental awareness, and care.
We're in phase 1 of our project timeline, which includes research and conceptual development. In phase 2, we'll undertake design development, culminating in the building of a full-size prototype of the biophilia treehouse on UCLA campus. During phase 3, we'll apply what we've learned to implement the building of 5 new biophilia treehouses in strategic places in LA County. We've already received some funding, including a grant from UCLA's Green Initiative Fund. Our vision is to contribute to a shift in how we humans understand ourselves in relation to the natural world. If the human species came to truly fathom its interconnectedness within the ecosystems it inhabits, we believe that a fundamental shift in how we design our built environments shall happen. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to gaining your support so that we may jointly benefit our avian neighbors and communities by enhancing biodiversity, ecosystems, and habitats here in LA County.
We are a counterforce.
Okay, so everybody watched it? Okay.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you all. Now we can all come back to Zoom together. Thank you. Thanks so much. So we'd love to open it up to questions. Thank you for watching the presentation.
Actually, the floor is going to go back to Ed Bacon to introduce our CSOs, if that's okay. Erin, and then we'll open up the floor to general questions.
Sounds perfect.
Ed, would you like to introduce?
I would love to introduce our CSOs, and after I have a moment of glory about the how inspiring that video was. Oh my God, I was making all sorts of connections between that beautiful, mysterious, mystical structure and the Pando tree, and how beautifully you all have put out that there is no other in nature and in creation. We are one another, and we are those birds, and those birds are we. So I really loved that. Now, having said that, I could go on and on and on, but we don't have time. Let me introduce, with great delight, 3 members of the Chief Sustainability Officer Strategic Task Force for LA County, who will be offering short assessments of this initiative and asking 1 or 2 questions each. And after the Chief Sustainability Officers have responded, we'll open up the Q&A period for public questions. Now, we're going to have 3 CSOs, and I must personalize this by saying, I think this is one of the most brilliant parts of Pando days and what we're trying to do in Pando Populous is there is this a marvelous connectivity between chief sustainability officers and brilliant designers and scientists and artists. And here you're going to get to see it. So first up today is Dean Kubani, founding chief sustainability officer for the city of Santa Monica. And after Dean responds, we will have one or two questions and then introduce the next CSO. So let me go ahead, say that will be Dominique Hargraves, Deputy Sustainability Officer for the City of Los Angeles. And then Dominique and then Mark will be up next. But now let's first go to Dean, right? Hi, Dean.
All right. Hi. Thanks for the introduction. And hello, everybody. As Ed said, it was a fantastic video. I was really impressed, and I spent quite a bit of time looking at your website and reading through all of the rationale behind it. I'm typically a very critical person. I worked for 25 years in local government, and my job was really involved in translating visionary ideas into practical, workable implementation, making them happen. So I'm constantly picking apart things. And that's possibly why Eugene invited me to be here in a constructive way to kind of hopefully make your project a little bit better. In reading through it all, I had very few questions that came up. I think it's a fantastic idea. I'm very familiar with habitat corridors and these introducing islands so that birds can go through. It seems like a really fantastic solution to address both declining species and declining habitat in LA County. I love how you've identified the certain species that you're targeting, the native plant species that will attract those, and also the locations, at least for your initial area, you know, really putting these in places where you don't have trees growing and you don't have any habitat. It's certainly filling in a big blank on the map, and it seems to me to be very well thought out and well put together. A lot of great detailed thought has gone into this, so congratulations. I think you've done a great job. My question from a kind of implementation standpoint is, in looking at the structures, there wasn't a lot of information on how these structures go together. It says they're built entirely out of 2x4s, which is great because they're easy to transport, they're lightweight, they're easy to put together. But they also look, and I'll give you a little background. My original degree was in architecture, so I spent a lot of time on making sure buildings stand up and stay standing up. And I'm a little bit concerned about the structure of this. It doesn't look like it's anchored to the ground, unlike a tree which has a large root system. And I'm not certain about the structural system that's actually holding it all together. So my question for the actual sustainability of this project is, how is it actually held together, and is it designed in a way that, anticipating future climate change, stronger storms and winds and all these types of things, are these things going to be able to stay in one place and stay up so they don't get knocked over?
Do you want us to respond now or after all the questions? So now is the good, we respond now, right? Okay, wonderful. That's a great, great question, Dean. Definitely. And this is something that I'm sure, you know, our architect student, Sana, can respond to. I know that we have some, of course, this is like a living structure that has both the tree and the structure together. So, but Sana, I'm pretty sure we'll talk a little bit about that. So the floor is yours, Sana.
Yes, Dean, thank you so much for your question. Love to elaborate on that. So right now, as you saw, we're pretty much very much so in the schematic phase, and part of the funding process for us is really to be able to bring on consultants on the engineering end to do the analyses and do the charts for seismic issues and all the structural issues that you brought up. What wasn't shown in the renderings is how these figures get anchored into the ground. So there will definitely be some foundation work that needs to be done. And we have precedents from Japanese architects that show us that these foundations can be put in place and connected to those wood members without it being a very obvious design move. So it's very much so a hidden part of the project. Another thing that we've been exploring and did a lot of research on is biobotanic, which is a technique of bringing in the plants to take on some of those structural loads. So part of consulting with an engineer would be to ask, okay, how much pressure is this tree or this living plant going to put on our structure? And how much load can it actually bear for our structure? And how can we incorporate some of the living elements to take on some of the structural pressures that it's going to face? Obviously, we're in California, we're in Los Angeles, so seismic issues, wind issues are all going to be a big problem for us, but it's definitely something that we have to consider and we are considering. So moving forward, it's definitely going to be at the forefront of the issues that we consider.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I must add just a beautiful thing that I'm loving this biobotanique because it is, or biobotanique, because it says here, it takes advantage of the constructive intelligence of plants. And that is so beautiful because, again, it's a method of construction that utilizes living plants as the load-bearing systems in architectural structures. So this is what's so unusual about this, is that it is a co-structure of living and of a built one.
Dean, did you have a second? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Johnny.
Just in terms of the individual members and how they come together, the technique, we're really hoping that in the research phase, we master this technique of the interlocking joint so that the structure itself is self-supporting, and the way that these members interlock with one another would sort of self-support itself, and then we have those anchors into the foundation. So this is all work that needs to be done in the research prototyping phase.
Dean, did you have a second question?
I don't have another question. I do have just a follow-up on that. Thank you for the answer. I'm glad you're thinking through the structure of this and the stability of it as in a detailed way as you have the design. So that's a great, fantastic idea. And I agree with you that I really like the idea of the man-made part of the structure and the biological part of the structure joining together. That's really both symbolic and I think it kind of really tells the story behind this project. So really nice work. Thank you all.
Thank you. Can I make a quick follow-up to that and
Please.
answer? Yeah, just I think you're hitting on something that's really at the base philosophical level of what we're trying to do, which is, there's this whole conversation going on about infrastructure and how to move forward with built environments and things. And the idea of like tapping into, so changing our frameworks, our ways of thinking about our relationships in the natural world, and tapping into the wisdom of plants and animals, and to work collaboratively. So that's really like the core foundation of what we're doing.
Very important. Thanks. So thanks, Dean. Now it's time for Dominique to respond. Dominique Hargraves is the Deputy Sustainability Officer for the City of Los Angeles. Dominique?
Thank you so much, and great job, UCLA team. It was fantastic. I loved that video. It was elegant, it was beautiful, and it had so many co-benefits in thinking about providing nesting space, in providing respite for humans. It just kind of, it checked all the boxes, providing more park space and park-poor neighborhoods. It's just a really elegant solution to multiple challenges that we're facing in the county. I didn't know we were the birdiest county, and I didn't know birdiest was a word, so I'm glad to have learned that today with you guys. The use of native plants, I think, of course, is brilliant, and the design being inspired by nature and for nature is just absolutely wonderful. One thing, when I looked at the renderings, I felt a slight element of danger when I saw the treehouse kind of right, one of the perspectives showed the treehouse right under or next to the power lines. And it just made me worried, knowing how many issues we've had at LADWP and other utilities with brush near power lines. As Dean explained, we probably don't really need to go into that. But there was just an inherent risk in having those two co-located. My question is if there will be water connected to the treehouse for the birds and for the plants, if there's a consideration for how that would be integrated. And then I also was wondering if you would be open to thinking about attaching air quality monitoring devices to these tree houses so that we can track air quality in different parts of the city that we do not have the ability to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique. Yeah, of course, we'd be totally open to putting air quality monitors. That's such a wonderful idea. In terms of the water issue, yeah, that's definitely something that we're thinking about. Sana, do you want to speak to this?
Sure, yes. So this is something, again, that we are going to work with the consultants on, but in terms of how we imagine right now watering the plants is having a drip irrigation system that is integrated into the design and provides the specific amount of water for each plant. In terms of how we're going to do something like that, say on campus versus in the city, that's all things that we want to coordinate with our sustainability coordinators on campus and then city officials. Erin, I think you also can touch on that a little bit about our partnerships on campus.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I'm going to share my screen very quickly to show you our timeline to discuss where we're at so I can answer this question. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to share with you a slide. So right now we're doing phase one, finishing phase one, and we're entering phase two, where we're doing design development, and we're going to build a full-size prototype on UCLA campus. Now, what is so wonderful and exciting about this project is that we have the backing and support of partnership of some very key offices at UCLA. So the UCLA Sustainability Office, head by Nurit Katz, has been an incredible partner to us. She has secured for us a spot on UCLA campus to build our prototype, to do this very important testing so that we can figure out how we're going to do water implementation, how we're going to work with structure, all of these things to test here at UCLA campus. We also have an incredible partnership in the UCLA Sustainable LA Grand Challenge. Again, these are wonderful partners, advisors, Cassie Rouser and Elizabeth Raid Wainscott, who we're lucky enough to have advising us and sort of pulling the levers of UCLA infrastructure to make this thing happen. So that's going to unfold next year and the year after on UCLA campus when we build our prototype.
And I think it's a very site-specific issue as well.
This is Miriam. I'm on the call today.
Oh, hi, Nurit.
I was just going to say how excited we are to work with you.
Oh, Nuri, your sound isn't working properly.
Uh-oh, Nurit, unfortunately the sound is we're having some issues.
Sorry, Nuri, we couldn't hear you properly.
What?
and what an amazing project it is and navigate those infrastructure challenges.
Thank you, Nurit, so much. Unfortunately, much of the audio we couldn't hear.
Chat.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, great.
Erin, I have a follow-up question for you. Have you considered using materials to construct the prototype that are possibly reused, such as wood, from a building that is being torn down on campus or other nearby building?
Yeah, I'm going to throw this to Sana as well. We are thinking about some of those things.
Yeah, one of our team members found a really great resource for recycled materials, and we would try to really incorporate it in any part of the project that we can. Given the way that we're sort of formulating the modular system, I think the tolerance levels are going to have to be very specific, and so the best shot of us getting a structurally sound system is having that engineered lumber that is really specific. And if we're going to be using machines to be cutting the notches and really getting tight fits on the notching system, then we would have to have very precise measurements. And so it might just be a challenge, but it's definitely something that we're considering and we're really wanting to incorporate in the project. Let's say if it comes to landscaping and we want to use some mulch or wood chips, then definitely we would use the resource that our partner found. In terms of the water and irrigation system, I just wanted to quickly say, it's going to be a very site-specific issue as well. So we are considering rainwater collection systems and water basins. We would want that to be not load-bearing on the structure. So that's why it would have to be a very site-specific answer. But definitely we're trying to use the technologies that are available to us as much as possible. And in California, there's been so much work done on rainwater collection and how to recycle that.
And one last thing that I want to add, of course, our woodpeckers need this recycled wood. So we know that we're going to be building a section that it's basically with that recycled wood for our woodpeckers to just peck at and love.
How wonderful to consider the woodpeckers. That's great. Dominic, thank you very much for your really great questions. So now it's time to go to Mark Spears, my friend, who is the retired Chief Sustainability Officer for Disney. So, Mark, questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ed. And initially, at least, an observation, and a really congratulations, Rebecca, to you and the entire team and all your advisors on the innovation approach to this. I think when we think about Southern California and LA County specifically, there are a lot of high visibility landmarks that we're all used to, whether it's the Santa Monica Pier, or the LA Coliseum, or the Hollywood sign. I think most people don't appreciate the fact that LA County also, besides the birds, has a significant tree canopy. According to the LA County Tree Canopy Assessment back in 2016, I think the coverage is about 18% for the county and 25% for the city, which has greatly diminished over the years with urbanization. So the opportunity that you all are presenting here to really recapture some of that, and really underscored by Counterforce, really as a symbol, is pretty fantastic. Also applaud you for the integration of the biomimicry principles. And I think there's so much symbolism that you've built in, notwithstanding simply the structure, but the educational opportunities and the opportunities really to draw or attract community to this really this living organism or structure is fantastic. When I first looked at it, actually what conjured up to me is the Watts Towers, and just another very iconic sort of community symbol for our area. So congratulations to all of you. Let me mash up two questions, and you all can decide how you want to answer them. One is really asking you to give a little more context to the design and ideation process that resulted in the tree and its structure and concept, and also as you think about siting this beyond the UCLA campus, does it change? Does the design and the elements of biodiversity that are integrated within the structure, particularly the native plants, change based on location? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Those are some great questions. For your first question, you know, the best way to answer that question is to sort of talk about our team. So to make this structure, right, we talked about how we want to be a partner and collaborate with the natural world, with the birds, with the plants, right? And so in order to do that, we know that we have to do a ton of research. So what do? We build an interdisciplinary team where we're bringing on bird researchers, architects, people who can, so we can answer this very important question from multiple points of view, not just ours, right? So I think the team is like at the core of this thing, and why I'm so proud of the design we've come up with. But to further answer your question, I think it would be great to bring on Ellie, our bird researcher, to speak to this first part of your question, and maybe even the second. Ellie, do you want to come on and speak to this?
Yes. Yeah. Hi. Thank you for the interesting question. I think if it's okay, I'll start with the second question first. So if the structure changes and the birds change and the plants change, and the answer is yes. So jumping off of what Aaron was saying, a lot of research has gone into this, and the birds that are chosen for this presentation, the prototype, are somewhat particular to UCLA and the region that it's in. So we're choosing indicator species so that we can potentially attract a whole slew of other birds, because theoretically the native plants that they need are also going to attract other bird species, but the indicator species might shift depending on where the structure is, and depending on the ecosystem around there. So I think that what we're going to do is really just do more research at each site and figure out what bird species are present, what bird species need help, and it could be that, you know, that they might be the same depending on where the structure is, and they might differ a little bit, and so that way the structure can change. And then in terms of the ideation for this, we started with thinking about what the birds need. So I know Aaron and Rebecca always love saying that the birds are our clients here. What we first did is determined, you know, which species we wanted to attract, why they are relevant and what they need, and then build a structure accordingly. That might, you know, give more than just what a tree might give, because here we're giving them all of these different foraging resources, nesting resources. How can we put that in a structure that can also be a place where humans can interact with nature, and they can also still be undisturbed?
Yeah, and I think this could be a good segue too to talk about how these, not only are these spots for biodiversity, you know, hotspots, but also the wildlife corridor function of our tree houses, because that's one of the core concepts. Ellie, could you speak to that? Because I see that we only have 15 minutes left, and I really want us to talk about the wildlife corridor aspect.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, you know, we all know that urbanization is a major threat to wildlife and to biodiversity. That's one of the reasons that cities are relatively low in biodiversity, and, you know, why we see this drop off in species diversity in Los Angeles. And the reason that is we basically, you know, this land was all covered before we put concrete all over it. And when you break up habitat, what you're doing is you're making it harder for organisms to travel across a landscape, and you're restricting, you know, where they can go. So by doing that, you're not just cutting down the range, you're also, on a practical level for each individual, if they're trapped in a smaller park or disconnected, their functional range drops as well. And it can lead to very unhealthy populations because they have a limited range. They might not be able to disperse to mate with somebody that is, you know, more distantly related, or in some cases, they might not just have the space requirements that they need. For instance, you know, larger species typically need larger ranges. So what we're doing, and one of the ways to solve this, is building habitat corridors, really trying to link disconnected habitats throughout Los Angeles. And it also just so happens, not really by coincidence, but by historic environmental racism in Los Angeles, that a lot of that habitat that's missing, a lot of park poor areas are also low income areas with high proportions of people of color that have been underserved in our communities. So by building corridors through these neighborhoods, we can serve the birds, and we can also potentially help to rectify that historic injustice simultaneously.
Thanks, Ellie.
Powerful. So thank you very much, Paul. And now we turn to our friend, Adam Ewens, curator of Pando Days, and he's going to moderate our public Q&A. Hey.
Thank you, Ed. I see we have one question here that was kind of addressed somewhat, but I'll read it anyway, and then maybe I'll have some additional things to ask myself. But if you have any questions for the team, please type them in right now. So Paul Rogers asks, as a living structure, what thought has gone into adding natural elements that will grow with the installation? Two possibilities come to mind: planting vines at the base of the tree house that will grow over time into the structure, or planting grasses, lichens, shrubs in the immediate vicinity that can be used by birds as nesting materials. And I'd like to add to this. I saw that in your consultants, you also spoke to the Theodore Payne Society, who are all into native plants and so forth. And you spoke with the local, the Bruin Audubon Society. And what did they say to you? Did they say you're crazy? We already have trees that do the same thing. Do they like the idea?
Thanks, Adam. It's a great question. They like the idea very much, because anything that furthers, trying to get native plants into our habitats is incredibly important. So we've had great conversations with the Audubon LA, with the Audubon president here at UCLA, and with Theodore Payne. That's another one of our foundational pieces of this, right? Native plants. It's a pillar of the project. I'd love to invite Alvaro, another team member, to speak further on this, maybe specifically to look at that question. Alvaro, do you want to come on board?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so we've been working with Evan Meyer at Theodore Payne Foundation. We established this connection that we've been working on with very closely, and he is now the executive director of the Theodore Payne Foundation for wildflowers and native plants. And we've also been working with Erin Johnson, who's the outreach manager at the Theodore Payne Foundation. So this is a relationship that we're building closely, because Evan Meyer was previously the assistant director at the Mildred E. Matias Botanical Garden at UCLA. So this is a relationship that we've been developing over the time, and he's very enthusiastic about the project overall.
Thanks, Alvaro.
Yeah.
I would ask when I was staying at Mary Knoll, the campus of the sisters in Monrovia, I saw this bird that I just couldn't figure out what it was. And it turned out it was a red whiskered bulbul. And this is a bird that is kept by Vietnamese people, because back in Vietnam, they hold them in bird cages, and people come to hear them sing in those cages. And so that's how this bird got introduced here by perhaps the refugee community of Vietnamese, and escaped into the wild, and now is a new inhabitant of LA. And the same goes for the parrots. They might have come from the Amazon, and they still find the trees here that are from the Amazon to nest and to feed and so forth. So there's this whole thought of being native is good, but there's also this multi-diverse world happening. How would you address that?
That's a great question, Adam. And it's it's almost a philosophical question. Rebecca, do you want to come on and give that one a go?
I was reading the other question. Give me just a quick one again. What was the question, Adam? Sorry, remind me. I saw another question.
LA has also become a place where it's not only native birds, but you also have many exotic birds that thrive here also.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's beautiful, right? Los Angeles is a city of immigrants. And so for me, the idea that the conditions that are appropriate for Los Angeles and for a specific place, right? Let's say Westwood or wherever we're going to be doing this, they have, like Ellie was saying, the indicator species we're catering to them, but they will be attracting so many other birds. I think it's fantastic. I mean, the fact that parrots will be around is like to me, there's no boundaries in that. And the more diverse, the better. And sure, there are some, for example, we were looking at the sterlings that immediately come and they just dominate an entire space. So I feel that this is something that, how does that affect the species that are local is what would be of concern to me, right? For example, I think that that's something that Ellie, do you want to just quickly answer to that? Because that's very important. One thing is wanting the diversity, but then how do we adjust so they are not dominated, right?
Yeah, I'd love to comment on this. I think it's a really important question, and it's something that I think is more recently much more debated as to whether we should, keep killing invasive species in cities specifically. And I think that what we're doing is we're catering to species that need our help. Rather than necessarily saying we're going to drive other species out. One of the issues with urbanization is that it does attract a lot of invasive species, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if they're not harming the local fauna that is already decreasing in population size or diversity, whatever it might be. So what we're doing is we're providing habitat specifically for the native species that we know need help. And we know that, parrots, starlings, house sparrows, species like that don't really need our help. But if they occur and if they're not harming other organisms, then there is no reason that we should push them out. That's my philosophy on it as well. There are, if anybody is interested in this subject, I'm happy to recommend some interesting books or directions on the philosophical debate. But the goal here is to attract species that we do know need our help.
Yeah, I think that's core. And then I see in the chat too that Elizabeth and Nerd have made the very true comment that not all non-natives are invasive. Yeah, it's yeah. Okay, thanks, Adam.
Now the questions are flowing in. Jeannie Atherton asks, have people in the communities where you plan to locate the corridors and structures been included in these conversations? Learning to imagine is a huge empowering habit of thought.
Thank you. This is a massive question and such an important part of our project. So to go back to our timeline, we're entering this phase where, and we've been doing this throughout, but partnerships. I mean, talk about another pillar. This is another huge pillar. So partnerships. This week, in fact, we are having a meeting with the principal of Esperanza Elementary School that is near MacArthur Park, because we want to work, we envision partnering with schools, possibly having schools host our sites, because we envision the treehouses being sites for hands-on education. Because if you are really serious about biodiversity, ecosystems, and habitats and protecting them, you've got to educate people why they're important. I have received a huge education working on this, right? Like, education is so key. When you understand that we need healthy ecosystems to have healthy communities, then you make the right choice, or hopefully you make the right choices, or you fight to make the right choices. So community and partnership is incredibly important for the project.
Yes, and I think that right now, one of the things that we always want to start with is we don't know what they want. We don't know what they need. Just the same way that we had to learn exactly what the birds want and need. And we built from that. We, in the same manner, is the moment that we know that there are some interesting places, like we know where the corridors are, is, let's say, with the principal, Brad, at Esperanza primary school, is that elementary school. We meet with them, we listen, we understand a little bit of what is it that they would need, and then we start the partnership. And then the work, the piece, the biophilia tree houses are so modular, and they can be any scale, they can be any footprint, they can contain a specific kinds of plants that would be, again, site specific, community specific. And, you know, I think that the continuation of the question was, you know, what is this in terms of maintenance and the cost to the communities, if any, right? So we know very well that this is not something that is basically imposed in the community, but it's like a community garden, and we need to be able to enter in it, knowing that we as UCLA, we're pretty much a constant place of workshop, of support, of always there's going to be a partner in part from UCLA. We're not going anywhere for a long, long time. And I think that, you know, we're considering these ones to live, you know, just like I'm a public artist, right? So I know that they always ask me, this needs to last 30 years minimum. We're expecting these ones to last 30 years minimum. And so what does that mean? It is for us to slowly put them with the communities that will be a long, long-term relationship. And so we're looking forward to definitely establishing these relationships. We will never start thinking we know, and we know them. But it's all about listening and getting to know the community and really entering into friendships, just the same way that we'll enter into interspecies friendships with these beautiful wild animals, the birds. So we obviously then enter into friendships with our communities. They're long lasting.
J.A. Houston asks, it seems that you have created a beautiful sacred space. What access will the public have to the area? And that's perhaps interesting to talk about where after the Blitz, what the idea was for the project as a chill out space or a time out space for kids at school. And then it kind of grew to this temple idea. Could you address that? How accessible will it be for the public?
Sure, it's interesting that this question brings in this idea of sacred space, because originally we were calling them biophilia temples. Because we want this place, as Rebecca was saying so beautifully, that this is about interspecies friendship. We want to bring together sites where we can develop those friendships. So Rebecca, do you want to elaborate on this question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's inevitable that what we want is for people to reconnect to the natural world, to kind of through experiences that, and you were mentioning, is like when you are young, when you are in elementary school and you begin to enter into relation with the natural world, it's most likely that you will tend to it later on in your life. So we know that for us to be able to to get it right in this world right now. I mean, we are in crisis. We are in a disconnection crisis in that, we are dominating so much and destroying so much as a human species, that for us to be able to enter at such an intimate way with another species, it would help us to really kind of know what is it that being alive matters, and how is it that we can become better ancestors so that we enter into a new relationship and find our place in the universe again. So I think that this education, I know at one point it was called a timeout, right? Imagine if you're in school and then your principal sends you to just have a timeout. You go into this temple and you are able to somehow just be distracted. You see the little butterflies, you see the birds, you see all these things that you no longer are, you get distracted by the living, by the lovely world that it is around us. So yes, it is a very spiritual place. Anytime that you tend to a flower, anytime that you observe a bird for longer than 25 seconds, right? You enter into a spiritual place. You enter into a very, very, to me, a spiritual place, yeah.
Thank you. With that, I think it's a perfect time to hand it back to Ed for some final words.
I'm so grateful and I am so inspired by this hour. Thank you, Rebecca, and your entire team. Each one of you brings a brilliance to the task. And you've reminded me over and over again that Mother Teresa said, every problem that we have is because we've forgotten that we belong to one another. And you have lifted up the cancer and the virus of our disconnectivity, not only with one another across all sorts of boundaries, but also with the more than human world. And for the birds not only to be our clients, but also to be our leaders. Look at what they're teaching your team. It's just so stunning. So deep bows of gratitude and respect to the UCLA team, for UCLA being so mission driven, and also for the LA County for having such a visionary approach to sustainability. It has been a very inspiring hour. I hope we've recorded it. I want to go back and preach a lot of it in sermons. So deep bows of gratitude to all of you. Thank you very much. And we've had a huge number of people. I'm on Zoom meetings all the time. And to have 2 screenfuls of people is always just a very inspiring thing. Miracles still happen, and they happen because people come together in community. So on behalf of Pando Populus, the whole spirit of Pando, thank you all for joining us. And now I'm going to give it back to Eugene Shirley.
Thank you so much, Ed, for hosting this. It's been great to have you with us, and thank you for being the host. And thank you, Rebecca, and to the whole team. It's really just a wonderful, fascinating, and terrific presentation. I'd like to remind everyone that they can see all the UCLA project descriptions and deliverables and whatnot, everything on our website, pandopopulus.com. Thanks very much to the members of the CSO Strategic Task Force who responded today, Dean Kubani, Dominique Hargraves, and Mark Spears. And many thanks to the Pando Days curator, Adam Ewens, to festival producer Shelley Goldstein, to producer Betsy Hunter, and to story coach Judith Parker. Pando Days was conceived with the help of the CSO Strategic Task Force and made possible by the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation, Second Home, the Mary Knowles Sisters, and many others. Make sure to join us this coming Friday at 1 o'clock for the premiere presentation by Cal State Long Beach of their new initiative, We Are the Sea. You can get a preview of it on our website now. Remember that projects are going up on a rolling basis and are posted on the Friday before their premiere week. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a great rest of your afternoon.